Most people never stop to calculate what meat is actually costing them. They see a package, they see a price, they pay it, then they do it again, the next week and the next and the next, without ever adding it up. Chicken at $4 to $6 a pound, beef pushing $8, $10, sometimes $12 a pound, pork not far behind. A family of 4 can easily eat 300 pounds of meat in a year without thinking twice about it. When you finally do the math, the number is uncomfortable. $1,200, $1,500, sometimes more every single year gone. Not for luxury, not for indulgence, just to keep protein on the table. And here's the part that rarely gets questioned. You are paying that money to a store for something you could be producing yourself, quietly, in your own backyard, with almost no ongoing cost. Not with acres of land, not with dozens of animals, not with complicated systems, just 3 rabbits. This isn't about becoming a farmer. It isn't about turning your yard into a zoo. It's about understanding scale. 2 does and 1 buck. That's it, 3 animals. From those 3 animals comes roughly 200 pounds of clean, lean meat every year. Not hypothetically, not eventually. Consistently, year after year. That's close to 2/3 of the meat a typical family needs. And the feed bill is almost non-existent. Rabbits eat what you are already throwing away. Weeds pulled from the garden, grass clippings from the lawn, vegetable scraps from the kitchen. Things with no market value that usually end up in a bin become fuel for protein production. You are not buying expensive grain. You are not hauling feed bags every week. You are converting waste into food. When you step back and look at it honestly, the system exposes something uncomfortable. The expense of meat is not inevitable. It's structural. It's the result of outsourcing responsibility to an industrial supply chain that profits from distance and dependency. Rabbits quietly dismantle that model. They do not compete with your life. They fit into it. This idea isn't new. It is an experimental. John Seymour wrote about it decades ago in The Self-Sufficient Life. He called rabbits one of the best animals a self-supporting family can keep. Not because they are cute, not because they are easy, but because they turn low-value vegetation into excellent meals with unmatched efficiency. Humans raised meat this way for thousands of years before supermarkets existed. The knowledge didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because it stopped being profitable for someone else. Rabbits are not a novelty solution. They are the most efficient meat animal you can raise on a small scale. They convert feed to meat faster than chickens. Faster than pigs, faster than cattle. One doe alone can produce 40 to 50 pounds of meat a year on grass and weeds. Multiply that by 2, and suddenly the numbers stop being theoretical. They become practical, they become personal. This isn't about saving money as an abstract idea, it's about control. It's about deciding where your food comes from, what it eats, and what it costs you. Once you see the system clearly, it becomes difficult to unsee it. 3 rabbits, 200 pounds of meat. And a choice most people never realize they have. What most people misunderstand about raising rabbits for meat is emotional, not technical. They think the barrier is space or cost or complexity. It isn't. The real barrier is perception. Rabbits are treated like pets in modern culture, which makes people uncomfortable with the idea of using them as livestock. But this discomfort is artificial. If you eat meat, an animal already died for that meal. The only difference is distance. When you raise rabbits yourself, the distance disappears and responsibility returns to you. John Seymour was very clear about this. He wrote that anyone who eats meat must be willing to take responsibility for killing it. Otherwise, they are outsourcing an uncomfortable task while pretending it doesn't exist. Rabbits force honesty. They do not allow you to hide behind plastic packaging and fluorescent lights. And that honesty is precisely why the system works so well. It creates intention instead of impulse. Once that mental shift happens, the mechanics are surprisingly simple. The entire system is built around just 3 animals. 2 does produce the meat. 1 buck exists solely to breed them. You are not managing a herd. You are managing a cycle. Each doe produces 4 to 5 litters per year. Each litter averages 7 to 9 kits. You keep the young for 8 weeks, then you process them. At 8 weeks, a rabbit weighs 4 to 5 pounds. That is meat, not potential meat. When you do the math conservatively, allowing for losses, smaller litters, and natural variation, the numbers still hold. 2 does produce roughly 160 to 200 pounds of meat per year. That works out to about 4 pounds of meat per week, every week, all year long. Not in theory, in practice. This is where rabbits separate themselves from every other backyard meat animal. Chickens require constant attention, daily egg collection. Morning release, evening lockup. Predator pressure, grain dependence. Pigs need space, fencing, and large volumes of feed. Cattle are simply unrealistic for most people. Rabbits, by contrast, are quiet, contained, and efficient. They do not smell if kept dry. They do not attract attention. They do not require acres. They require consistency. Housing is straightforward. Each rabbit gets its own hutch, a simple wooden structure with wire mesh for ventilation, about 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 2 feet high, raised off the ground to stay dry. Rabbits tolerate cold extremely well. What they cannot tolerate is dampness. Dry and clean equals healthy. That rule alone prevents most problems. Inside the hutch is a nest box for the doe, a small enclosed space where she kindles and nurses her young. You do not interfere. Rabbits know what to do. 30 days after breeding, the kits arrive. The doe feeds them once or twice a day, usually without you ever seeing it happen. Nature handles the rest. This is not constant labor. Watering once a day, cleaning once a week, 15 minutes a day on average. In exchange, you are producing hundreds of dollars worth of meat annually. The return on time is extraordinary, which is why this system has survived for centuries in small households across the world. At this point, the system is no longer abstract. It becomes visible, predictable, repeatable, and once you understand that, the next question naturally follows. How do you manage breeding, timing, and processing without chaos? Breeding is where most people imagine complexity, but in reality, it is the most controlled part of the entire system. Rabbits are efficient by nature. Your role is simply to stay out of their way while keeping the timing intentional. The rule is simple: you always take the doe to the buck, never the other way around. The buck is territorial, the doe is not. 1 minute is usually all it takes. When the buck falls off, the job is done. After breeding, the doe goes back to her hutch. You mark the date. 30 days later, she kindles. No intervention, no assistance. Rabbits have been doing this successfully without human help for millions of years. Your job is to make sure the nest box is clean, dry, and available. That's it. A healthy litter will range from 7 to 9 kits. Sometimes fewer, occasionally more. If a doe produces more than 12, she physically cannot feed them all. In that case, you either cull the excess or foster them to another doe that kindled within a few days. This may sound harsh, but it is reality. Overcrowding leads to suffering. Clear decisions prevent it. The kits stay with the mother for 8 weeks. During this time, they require no special care. They nurse, they grow. They begin nibbling solid food at 2 weeks. At 6 weeks, you remove the mother and breed her again. Then she goes back to her litter. This overlap is intentional. It keeps the production cycle efficient without stressing the doe. At 8 weeks, the kits are ready. 4 to 5 pounds each. This is the ideal time. Beyond this point, feed efficiency drops. You are no longer converting grass into meat effectively. This system is built on precision, not sentiment. Processing at 8 weeks keeps costs low and output high. This is the point where many people hesitate. The act of processing, it is fast. It is clean, it is decisive. John Seymour describes it clearly because ambiguity creates fear. You hold the rabbit by the hind legs. You support the head. One firm motion breaks the neck instantly. There is no struggle, no prolonged suffering. Death is immediate. You hang the carcass, you skin it. You remove the organs. In minutes, you have clean, dressed meat ready for the kitchen. If you can cook a chicken, you can cook a rabbit. The flavor is mild lean, similar to chicken, but cleaner. Once you eat your first meal, the emotional barrier dissolves. Food becomes real again. Where most people fail is not here. It happens earlier. They name the rabbits. They handle them excessively. They blur the line between livestock and pets. Then when the time comes, they freeze. The rabbits continue breeding. Feed costs rise. Hutches multiply. And suddenly the system collapses under its own weight. This is not cruelty, this is clarity. Livestock are treated well, fed properly, kept healthy, and processed cleanly. Pets are something else entirely. Mixing the two destroys the system. When you respect the role of the animal, the system remains balanced. When you avoid responsibility, it falls apart. That is why this method works only for people willing to be honest about what meat actually is. And once that honesty is established, the real power of the system begins to reveal itself. Because rabbits are not just efficient, they are adaptable. Feeding is where the economics of rabbits completely break away from store-bought meat. Most animals require purchased calories, grain, pellets, processed inputs. Rabbits do not. They are designed to convert low-value vegetation into high-quality protein, grass, weeds, leaves, trimmings, things you already remove and throw away. In warm months, rabbits can live almost entirely on fresh greens. Lawn clippings, dandelion. Clover, plantain. Chickweed. Garden thinnings. Bolted lettuce. Carrot tops. Beet greens, anything leafy and clean. This is not a supplement. This is the foundation of their diet. The key rule is variety. Never feed only one plant for long periods. Diversity prevents digestive issues and mimics natural forage. In colder months, the system shifts slightly. Fresh greens decline, so hay becomes the base. Any good grass hay works. Timothy. Orchard, meadow. You add a small amount of grain or pellets only to maintain condition, not to drive growth. Adult rabbits need very little. Nursing does need more, because they are producing milk for large litters. Even then, the quantity is measured in ounces, not pounds. This is where people overspend. They treat pellets as the main feed and greens as optional. That reverses the economics. Pellets are insurance, not fuel. Greens are the fuel. When you understand this, feed costs drop dramatically. In some setups, to nearly zero. Water matters more than feed. Clean water daily always. Dirty water causes more problems than poor feed. A rabbit can tolerate nutritional variation. It cannot tolerate contamination. Keep water containers elevated. Change them daily. This single habit prevents most illness. Space requirements are minimal. 3 rabbits require 3 hutches. Each hutch is roughly 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, 2 feet high. Raised off the ground, dry. Ventilated. That's 18 square feet total, smaller than a parking space. This is why rabbits work in backyards, patios, even urban spaces where other livestock cannot. Time investment is equally small. Feeding once per day, watering once per day. Cleaning once per week, 15 minutes a day. 2 hours a week for 200 pounds of meat per year. There is no store trip that efficient. Health issues are rare when conditions are right. Dry housing, clean water, adequate airflow. Most rabbit losses come from neglecting one of these basics. Wet hutches lead to respiratory problems. Dirty water leads to digestive collapse. Solve those and rabbits thrive. This simplicity is deceptive. People assume something so small cannot be significant, but that assumption is exactly why this system works. It hides in plain sight. While industrial agriculture scales complexity, rabbits scale repetition. Small cycles, predictable outputs, minimal failure points. And once you see this pattern, you begin to understand why rabbits have quietly fed families for centuries without attracting attention. They do not require land. They do not require capital. They require discipline. And discipline, applied consistently, always beats scale. The breeding rhythm is what turns rabbits from an animal into a system. Without a schedule, you get chaos. Too many animals, too few animals, irregular harvests. With a schedule, everything becomes predictable. A doe is bred at around 6 months of age, not earlier. Her body needs to be mature enough to handle repeated litters without stress. When breeding, the doe is always taken to the buck, never the other way around. The buck is territorial. In his space, breeding is fast and efficient, usually under a minute. Afterward, the doe goes back to her hutch. Gestation is 30 days. Mark the date, do not guess. Around day 28, you place the nest box into the hutch. The doe will pull fur from her chest and line it herself. Do not interfere unless the box is missing or dangerously wet. Kindling usually happens at night or early morning. 7 to 9 kits is normal. Some litters are smaller, some larger. If a doe produces more than 12, intervention may be required. A doe cannot nurse unlimited young. Excess kits can be fostered to another doe that kindled within a day or two, or humanely culled. This is not cruelty, it is management. Ignoring the problem causes more suffering, not less. For the first 2 weeks you do almost nothing. The doe nurses once or twice a day. The kits grow rapidly. Opening the nest too often causes stress. Observation is enough. Healthy kits are round, warm, and quiet. At 6 weeks the system overlaps. The doe is rebred while still nursing. This sounds extreme, but rabbits are biologically designed for this cycle. After breeding, she returns to her litter. At 8 weeks, the young are weaned and removed. This is when they are processed or moved to grow out if needed. 17 days after weaning, the doe kindles again. This creates an 11-week production cycle. 4 to 5 litters per year per doe. The calendar becomes automatic birth. Growth harvest. Repeat, this is where most people hesitate. Processing, killing, ending a life. But if you eat meat, this step already exists. You have simply outsourced it to a facility you will never see. Raising rabbits does not add death to your life. It removes denial. The method is fast. Clean, immediate. A quick cervical dislocation. No chase, no fear. No prolonged suffering, then skinning and gutting. 15 minutes. You now have clean, fresh meat. The emotional difficulty fades quickly when the process is handled correctly. What replaces it is respect for the animal, for the food, for the responsibility. People fail when they blur roles, when they name rabbits, when they treat breeding stock as pets, when they avoid harvesting. The population grows, costs rise, guilt sets in, the system collapses. This is not cruelty, this is clarity. Livestock have a purpose. When that purpose is honored, the system stays balanced. And balance is what makes this sustainable. Once the breeding and harvesting rhythm is established, the real advantage of rabbits becomes obvious: feed efficiency. This is where the system quietly outperforms almost every other form of backyard meat production. Rabbits do not compete with humans for food. Chickens eat grain, pigs eat grain. Even cattle rely on managed pasture that takes land, water, and time. Rabbits thrive on materials you already consider waste. Grass clippings, garden thinnings. Bolted lettuce. Carrot tops, beet greens, dandelions. Clover, plantain. Weeds pulled from paths and beds. This is not survival feeding. This is their preferred diet. During the growing season, rabbits can live almost entirely on fresh forage if it is provided consistently and cleanly. The key is variety. No single plant dominates the diet. This prevents digestive issues and improves overall health. What you remove from the garden becomes what feeds the rabbits. What the rabbits produce becomes manure. What the manure feeds becomes more plants. The loop closes. In winter, the system shifts slightly. Hay replaces fresh grass. A small amount of grain or pellet feed is added as insurance, not as a foundation. This is where most of the annual cost occurs, and even then it remains minimal. 1 or 2 bales of hay, a bag of grain. Compared to buying meat weekly, the difference is dramatic. Rabbit manure deserves special attention. Unlike chicken or cow manure, it does not need composting. It can be applied directly to the garden without burning plants. It is rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and beneficial microbes. In effect, rabbits produce fertilizer as a byproduct of meat production. Nothing is wasted. Space is another silent advantage. 3 rabbits require less than 20 square feet. This fits in almost any backyard, even a small patio. The hutches are vertical, compact, and odor-free when managed correctly. There is no noise, no early morning crowing. No complaints from neighbors. Time commitment stays low. Feeding and watering take minutes. Cleaning once a week keeps conditions dry and healthy. The system does not demand constant attention. It integrates into daily life rather than replacing it. Health issues are rare when basics are respected. Dry floors, clean water, adequate ventilation. Most rabbit deaths blamed on disease are actually caused by damp conditions or neglect. When those are removed, rabbits are extremely resilient animals. This reliability is what makes rabbits different. They do not require luck, they require consistency. And consistency is something most households can provide. At this point, the numbers stop feeling theoretical. Meat appears regularly, the freezer fills slowly but steadily. 1 meal a week becomes 2. Store purchases decline. The grocery bill changes without conscious effort. This is when the psychological shift happens. Meat stops feeling scarce, it stops feeling expensive. It becomes normal again, something produced, not purchased. And once that shift occurs, the question changes from "can I do this?" to "why didn't I start sooner?" By now, the system is no longer something you manage. It is something that runs. The rabbits breed on schedule. The feed sources rotate with the seasons. The freezer inventory becomes predictable. You are no longer reacting. You are operating from rhythm. This is where most people realize the real value was never just the meat. It was control. When prices rise, your costs do not. When shelves empty, your supply remains. When uncertainty enters the system, your household stays steady. This stability changes behavior in subtle ways. You waste less food because scraps have purpose. You garden differently because excess greens are assets, not clutter. Even your lawn changes role. It becomes feedstock instead of decoration. You also begin to see how small systems scale sideways instead of upward. You do not need more rabbits to increase resilience. You need redundancy, 2 hutches instead of 1. 2 breeding does, instead of a single point of failure. Small duplication beats large expansion. When one animal fails, the system does not. This is the opposite of industrial thinking. Factories centralize, biological systems distribute. 1 barn failure wipes out thousands of animals. 1 rabbit loss barely registers. There is also a quiet ethical shift. You stop outsourcing responsibility. You know where the meat comes from. You know how the animal lived. You know how it died. This knowledge does not harden you, it grounds you. The process becomes respectful because it is direct. Fear fades. The first processing was difficult, the second was uncomfortable, the third became focused. After that, it becomes calm, not casual calm. The animal is not a product. It is not a pet. It is a responsibility fulfilled cleanly and quickly. This honesty changes how you eat. Portions become intentional. Meals are appreciated. Waste feels wrong in a way it never did before. Food regains weight and meaning. Most importantly, the system does not demand belief. It demands action. You do not need to agree with a philosophy. You only need to feed 3 animals consistently and follow a schedule. The results arrive whether you believe in them or not. This is why the 2-rabbit system works. It is small enough to start, large enough to matter, simple enough to maintain, powerful enough to change how a household feeds itself. At some point you stop calling this self-sufficiency and start calling it normal. The idea of relying entirely on a store for meat begins to feel strange, fragile, temporary. You realize how thin the margin really was and how quietly you stepped away from it. This system does not make you extreme. It makes you independent in a small, practical way. You are not off-grid. You are not isolated. You are simply less exposed. And that difference matters more every year. 2 does. And $1 will never make you rich. That was never the goal. What they give you is something far more valuable. Predictability, control. Food that exists before money enters the equation. A supply that does not ask permission from a price tag or a truck schedule. Most people are one disruption away from panic because everything they need arrives just in time. This system operates just in case quietly, consistently in the background of your life. And once you experience that, it changes how you look at everything else. Vegetables. Water. Energy. You start asking the same question again and again. Can this be produced instead of purchased? Can waste become input? Can dependence be reduced without complexity? That is how real resilience is built. Not in dramatic leaps, but in small systems that actually run. Systems you understand, systems you can fix. Systems that do not collapse when conditions change. If this made sense to you, if it challenged the way you think about food, then you are already the kind of person who should be building systems like this. Subscribe for more practical, quiet strategies that turn backyards into security. Like the video so others who need this information can find it. And comment if you want the next system broken down step by step. This is not about rabbits. It is about taking food back under your control.